Welcome to this edition of the High Strangeness Factor on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm your host, Steve Ward. On the High Strangeness Factor, we explore all aspects of the paranormal and the unexplained. We seek out the parallels and patterns, underlying connections between what seem to be completely different areas of the unknown, such as UFOs, cryptids, haunting phenomena, and other types of paranormal experience. When we step back and take a wider view, the lines between these different areas begin to blur, and a very different view of reality emerges. And I want to introduce my guest co-host tonight, Zelia Edgar. Welcome to the High Strangeness Factor. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
And I want to let first off, before we talk about a little bit about what you've been doing, I want people to go into the archives and check out the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Check on the Podbean link, and if you go back just a little ways, you'll see I did a two-part interview with Zelia, and we had a great time talking
Yeah.
about all things paranormal. And we are turns out we are students of John Keel, which is very cool. And it's hard to get us to shut up when that happens. But and also, if you keep scrolling back to last February, you can find other episodes of the High Strangeness Factor, and there are many other really great shows on the network. So, Zelia, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing lately. I know you were recently on Wasteland. Was it Radio Wasteland?
Great Wasteland. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was just on there speaking about orbs and light anomalies, which, of course, was what I presented at Van Meter in September. So, and that was a really good time. I believe the archive should be up now. So, if you'd like to tune into that. And then, of course, I'm always making new videos for my YouTube channel, just another tinfoil hat.
Yeah, you say that again. This is one of the best titles of a YouTube video section I've ever heard.
Just another tinfoil hat.
And so if they type in that.com, they'll be able to find it.
Yep, that'll take you right to my website, and then that links into YouTube.
And of course, that's just one word. And you said you just put up a very recent video?
Yeah, my most recent one was The Haunting of Summerwind Mansion, which of course is one of the most well-known hauntings in the state of Wisconsin. I don't usually do too many videos on ghosts, so that was kind of a cool change of pace from my typical, monsters and space aliens and UFOs and everything. So,
well, they're very well done. I encourage everybody to check them out, and I will have to check that one out because that's an area that I don't get into much. Now, our guest will have a lot to say about ghosts and as well as many other things. And your second most recent one was the pancake video, right?
Yep, the Simonton encounter, pretty much my all-time favorite UFO occupant encounter, which also occurred in Wisconsin, which I just am always super happy about.
Yes, that it is pretty cool. And plus, you have quite a variety of other videos. And do you have anything coming up? Any appearances or anything like that you can talk about, or is there anything not certain yet?
Yes, this Sunday actually, I'm going to be on Spaced Out Radio.
With
Sunday
Everett.
night. Yep, with Everett. So really looking forward to that. I think Central Time it runs from 11 to 2 in the morning. So
Yes.
I'm really excited about this one. So
He
yeah.
He is absolutely great. You'll have such a good time. Do you know if you're going to do the full 3 hours or?
I believe so. I'm not
Okay,
100% sure.
You'll have it'll be when I got on there. I had just done a couple of shows, and I thought maybe I was only going to be on for an hour. And of course, out here
Yeah.
it starts at midnight.
Yep.
So, but it was going midnight to 3 in the morning with Everett was a blast. So you'll have a great time. Okay.
Okay.
Without any further ado, I want to introduce our guest, Cheryl Lynn Carter. has been a paranormal and historical researcher for 20 years. She is an international author of multiple paranormal and thriller books, including Whispers Beyond the Grave and the Darkness Trilogy, consisting of Fear the Darkness, Edge of Darkness, and Embrace the Darkness. Her new book, Dimensions, Mysterious Triangles of the U.S., which we'll be talking about, explores anomalous areas of the continental United States. She is a member of Michigan MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network in Michigan, their Michigan branch, and shares an interest with Brighton CE5 Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which we'll also be talking about. Cheryl was also a consultant for Thomas Conwell's book, They Are Here, Central U.S. UFOs. Cheryl, welcome to the High Strangeness Factor.
Hi, great to be here.
And if I was a professional radio guy, I wouldn't tell people that we had horrible technical difficulties for the first half hour and are doing some of this over again. But everything is nice and clear now. So that's really cool. Okay.
It happens a lot. But
yes.
the best part about radio is when a spirit comes over the airway.
Well, I was
I've had that happen.
Oh, you have? Well, tell us about that. What happened?
During radio shows, not just me. I've heard other radio shows where you'll hear a spirit's voice come through as you're talking.
And you can,
it's white noise.
You hear it audibly, or do you hear it later?
Noise. Oh yeah, we all hear it. Everybody hears it.
Okay, well
it's white noise over the airwaves. It happens.
You'll let me know, right, if you start hearing voices?
Sure.
And I'll have Zillia finish the show, and I'll just go have a cup of coffee or something. Okay, I've heard of that kind of thing. I had Marnie Kirby on several months ago, who was an experiencer, had some very strange Men in Black-like experiences, saw a strange cryptid out in I think a Muskegon State Park, and we had difficulties where all of a sudden Skype just went out, and we got her back, and she said, well, that's kind of par for the course for me. So there are certain people that seem to have that kind of interaction with electronics. Is that something that you have frequently?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, hopefully.
I always mess up people's Skype, yeah.
Okay. Now she tells me. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're in the clear now. When we talked before, you mentioned how you were, I guess, would you call yourself psychic or sensitive from an early age? What term would you use?
Well, I'm a psychic. I'm a medium. Everybody isn't all those things. I mean, a psychic knows something's going to happen before it does. A medium, you actually can read people's thoughts and feelings, talk to spirits that are around them. And this has happened to me since I was 4 years old.
Are you both psychic and a medium?
Yes.
Okay. So I have to be careful what I'm thinking.
No. I try not to read people's minds. Sometimes it happens.
Good.
I try not. I don't like to do that.
That's a real good thing around me because I have issues, but we won't go there. And Zillia, you mentioned also that you had what would call them your experiences when you were younger. Were you sensitive about things that were going to happen, or did you see apparitions?
It's kind of a mixed bag, I guess you could say. The earliest one I actually don't personally remember because I was I think just a little bit older than 2, and apparently I saw what you could describe as an orb, a ball of light in the hallway. And of course, as a 2-year-old, I had no idea what it was, so I asked my mom about it. My mom, of course, was thinking, well, I don't see anything. So there was some stuff like that. I've kind of always seen UFOs actually tend to be the thing that I see most often. Though in the house where we currently live, I've seen several things and had just bizarre experiences, I guess you could say, almost kind of like memory transfers or like reading the memory of the place, I guess.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's like, because I tend to try and come out this, more of like trying to figure out exactly what is going on. I don't know if I tend to be a little bit more hesitant to just like experience the experiences or something, because yeah, it's weird. It's stuff that I definitely can't explain.
See, I don't have that. Cheryl, you at a young age, you would try to go to sleep at night, and you would be visited.
Oh, always, almost every night. So as soon as I'd get in bed, they would like fly overhead and just come right down into my face and scare me to death. Every single night. And I don't know why they do this to little kids, but I've heard other people say that too. They weren't standing at the foot of my bed. They were flying up into my face.
And what did they look like? Or did you just sense them?
I mean, it was hard. It was like there was a whole bunch of them, and it was kind of blurry and stuff. But it was just faces of people. Don't know who they were, anything like that. And I always made sure that I stayed in the middle of the bed, because that old story about there's stuff under your bed. I knew there was stuff under my bed, and I kept the covers up because I didn't want anybody touching my foot or something. And it just took me like a few years to realize that I could just close my eyes and say, go away, and they'd go away. But I didn't know I could do that at first.
But eventually you found out you could command them to go away and you'd be left alone?
Yeah, just like right now, I have to tell them before I go to bed that they can't come into the bedroom, because they'll wake me up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and want to tell me something.
So this still
And I have to
happens.
say, I'm going to sleep. Oh, yeah. But they don't fly up in my face now. They're just like at the side of the bed or in my dreams. But I have to say, stay outside the bedroom. I have to sleep now. You guys don't sleep. I have to sleep. And they listen to you. They don't go in the bedroom when you're sleeping. Oh, yeah, it happens all the time.
What do they tell you? What kind of messages do you get?
Like, I have like dreams where I know things are going to happen about people that I know.
Okay.
That's just weird. Just weird like that. And like I had a really bad dream about somebody that I used to know, and nobody will tell them the dream that I had. So hope it doesn't come true. I just saw some people with guns coming after them.
Jeez.
Oh boy.
You know, yeah. I
Well,
didn't say they shot him, but they were coming after him, and I go,
right.
oh my gosh.
Well, that's quite a burden, especially
It is.
if the person that should know about this thinks you're nuts or isn't
Yeah.
receptive to it.
He would probably listen to me, but like I said, we're not friends anymore.
Oh, that's unfortunate for him.
That's the
I get
bad
it.
part I want him to know. But
Maybe you could drop him a postcard, then.
Yeah.
I've told a couple of mutual friends. I wish they would tell him.
When you have these like prophetic dreams, are they usually things of like great importance, or are they kind of, because I know I've had several instances of, I guess you could say like, yes, seeing something before it happens, but it's always really just trivial, tiny stuff. So
Yeah,
for you,
mostly it's
like,
trivial. Mostly it's trivial, but this is like a major thing here.
Yeah.
Mostly it's trivial stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Your book. We're going to jump around all over the place, which is fine. And
Okay.
Cheryl, anytime that you think we're missing something or you want to go back to something else, just let me know. Anyway, the point is that you have been sensitive, been psychic, been a medium all your life, and so you've just kind of learned to deal with it. And I know you've had some Bigfoot experiences we'll get to later. We definitely have to talk about that. But let's get into your most recent book a little bit, Dimensions, Mysterious Triangles of the U.S. And we talked before, when you say triangle, it's just sort of a means of talking about these areas, a way to label these areas, which I tend to call high strangeness areas. Others are very comfortable calling them portals, vortexes, or I guess the proper word is actually vortices, isn't it? But it's been bastardized.
Well, it could be all kinds. It could be a combination of all those things. It's not just one of those things.
Do you think that there? I know people use the words interchangeably, including Keel used the term windows, and do you think there's that they should be defined differently? Do you think portals, vortexes are different things in your mind, or are they all just different names?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's cool. What?
Have you ever come across the vortex? Do you know what a vortex is?
I wouldn't know one if I fell into it. I'm
Okay.
just I'm the guy that doesn't experience anything. So how would you describe it?
Because a portal is like an opening to somewhere
Okay.
else. Like you could, if somebody does open a portal, spirits can come in from the other side into a location and go back and forth. So it's like a doorway for them. A vortex is like energy coming straight up from the earth, almost like a waterfall, but it's not very wide. It could be 12 inches. Vortex isn't very big. And it's actually swirling energy. It goes clockwise. It's swirling energy. You can put your hand in there and you can feel it.
So you've been in places where you could actually sense the energy of a vortex.
And anybody could. If I told you where it was and you stuck your hand in it, you could feel that it's swirling around. But I
Okay.
said it's only like 12 inches. And it's not, I don't think it's something where you could get lost in like a portal would. It is, there's two different things, absolutely.
The portal that comes to mind, the incident on the Skinwalker Ranch where the two investigators saw something worming its way through kind of a light or hole in space, and it turned out to be kind of a Bigfoot-like creature that was moving along a narrow tunnel and got out and walked away.
Exactly, that's what I would call it, yeah.
And I think Tom Dongo, when he writes about the Bradshaw Ranch near Sedona, uh, talks about areas that sound more like, from your definition, possibly a vortex. So when Keel was talking about a window area, he was, I don't think he was defining exactly. He was just trying to, Zillia, I think he was just trying to account for the fact that these things seem to pop up, these cryptids, and hang around for a while and leave footprints and so forth, but then kind of go away.
Yeah, I would say it was kind of, a term just used to describe that sort of, I guess you could say, transparency, and also the ability for it to, like, it sometimes appear to be open / closed too. Kind of that analogy was there, I would
Yeah,
say.
right. Uh, so the triangle is kind of a. I know you're not literally saying that these are uh, limited to a triangular area. It's just kind of a convenient
Right,
nomenclature. Uh,
right.
let's see. We talked a little bit about the Alaska Triangle, and you mentioned one of the things that stood out for you were the incredible number of disappearances that happened in that has happened in that state. And what was
Yes,
the
because we had, what's my number here? Let me find my notes. Okay.
16,000 or something like that?
16,000 people have vanished since 1988.
And did you
Yeah.
mention the possibility of ley lines being involved, or did I
Yes,
miss you?
yes, right by the let's see. There actually is a vial vortex where two ley lines intersect, but it begins back by the Peruvian mountains by Lake Titicaca, and it's actually one of the largest ley lines on Earth, and it runs under the Alaskan Sea and along the fault lines.
Are you able to sense these lines of energy yourself? Have you been places where
I
you
can
really?
I can tell, like when we were up at the Michigan UFO Contact Convention, I felt really weird the whole time I was there, and I couldn't stand up straight or something. Something was like off with my energy. And then I found out
Just a
that they
second.
had
I just want to let people know that took place in Houghton Lake, Michigan, on the Lower Peninsula,
Houghton Lake, yes.
about 2/3 of the way up, I would say. But anyway, what was it you felt? What was it you sensed?
I just felt off, and I couldn't like stand up straight or something. I just didn't feel right, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And my friend Mike says, well, that's because of the ley lines. So there were ley lines there.
I'll be darned.
So I guess I could feel it. Yeah, I didn't know what I was feeling, but yeah, I just couldn't seem to stand up straight. When I'm sitting down, I was okay, but when I'm standing up, it was like I'd be leaning one way or the other or something. So yeah,
Like one of those mystery spots,
Oh,
tourist traps,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
yeah. That's how it was, and I couldn't understand what it was until he told me. I said, oh, that explains it.
I remember one of the specials David Paulides did not too long ago. And David Paulides, of course, is the guy that wrote the Missing 411 books and talks about very strange disappearances. He seems to give credibility. I can't remember the exact way he put that. I don't know if you guys saw that special. But there was a case where one particular guy disappeared, and there's no place he could have gone. I mean, it was just open area. There's no holes or crevices or anything like that.
Yeah.
And they were taking measurements in the area that they seemed to get some kind of anomalous readings that might lend toward the idea that these unstable areas might, I mean, speculation, of course, might lead towards some actual disappearances.
Yeah, I actually got to hear him speak up in Chicago 2 years ago. It was very interesting.
Yeah, I saw him speak at near Pittsburgh a couple of years ago, and I have to tell you guys, Celia, he was at a table sitting next to Stan Gordon, and Stan Gordon, of course, is the guy that investigated high strangeness in Pennsylvania, which is also covered in your book, an area in Pennsylvania. And they were talking, and all of a sudden, David Paulides stops and he looks up and he says, John Keel, he was ahead of his time. And I'm going, yes.
Yeah.
So
That's really
he's really had a profound effect on everybody. Have you read anything by John Keel, Cheryl, just out of curiosity?
I think I have. I know the name.
Yeah, the Mothman Prophecies guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I read that. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, and then we were talking a little bit about. I mentioned the. Oh, come on, Bridgewater Triangle, which is part of the Freetown State Forest in Massachusetts. I've been to Massachusetts. I used to be stationed out in the Navy in Connecticut, but I never went to the Freetown State Forest. And there are you were talking about how there are all kinds of things going on there and so forth. But talk about a little bit about some of the cryptids that are seen out there.
They have giant snakes, thunderbirds, Bigfoot, and the Pugwudgies. They're like little troll-like creatures. They have gray, smooth skin. Sometimes they glow. Scary little guys.
I heard a radio show where people went out there, including Jeff Belanger was in one of the groups, and they got something on a photograph that was kind of an evil looking little thing. And the one lady that was there that was a medium, she was taken over by something. And this thing was growling and everything. And the other guy with her, who it was his view is a Roman Catholic context, was doing the prayers and the holy water and the cross to get this thing out of her. And then it came back later. And it had Chris Belzano was there, who's written a couple of books on the Bridgewater Triangle. So there was some credible people there. I think something really weird happened, but it was they certainly had quite an experience with the Pugwudgies or something.
That sounds like one of them now.
Yes, and he also told us about a rock, a mysterious or the legend of a mysterious rock out there.
There's a mysterious rock with nobody can tell you exactly where it is or what it looks like, but it's got to be quite large that you can be able to stand on it. And supposedly, if you stand on it, it becomes liquefied and it just eats you up. Don't know.
Makes me think of Steve McQueen and the Blob.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't need that. And the book is full of different areas. We'll talk a little bit about them. Little Egypt is interesting to me because Chad Lewis, somebody that Zillia and I know, Chad Lewis, Kevin Nelson, and Noah Voss wrote the book The Big Muddy Monster, about a series of Bigfoot reports in Little Egypt, which is southern Illinois. Now, I don't really know why they call it Little Egypt, and I think you discussed that in your book somewhat.
Yeah, actually, it's the tip of Illinois, which that part really is a triangle. We have a real triangle there. And I've lived in Illinois all my life, and I didn't even know about this place. So I started reading my book. So I started doing my book. And it was in 1799, the Baptist minister, John Bagley, he was up on a bluff near Alton, Illinois, which is way down on the bottom there, and he was overlooking the valley there, and it reminded him of the Nile Valley in the Bible, and so he named it the land of Goshen, and he named all the towns around there towns that were along the Nile River.
Oh, okay.
That's how it got its name. Yeah, because there's a town named Cairo. I've been down there. It's a ghost town right now. But
Now, since then have you been down in the Little Egypt area? Have you done any exploring down there or anything?
yes, last June I went down to Cahokia Mound. It's
Okay.
like a
Oh,
Mayan or Aztec village. Yeah.
yeah, I
And
know
they
of it.
think it was built when a supernova occurred around 10/6 AD in the constellation Lupus of the Milky Way, and that's why they built it. And there were 190 mounds there, and they align with different stages of the moon and the sun. We used to have a population of about 20,000 people, and there's about 6 square miles.
And aren't there still quite a few mounds out there?
Yes, I actually, the one I wanted to see was Monk's Mound. It's the largest pre-Columbian structure north of Mexico, and it covers 14 acres. It's actually the size of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And you can walk up to the top of it. It's 154 steps all the way up to the top. And when you get up there, you can feel there's a vortex that is coming up through the whole thing when you get to the top. You feel the vortex.
Wow, Monk's Mound. I'm going to have to. That's one of the places on my bucket list to go. I've been able
I
to
want
check
to
out.
go back there. I only got to spend one day there. I want to go back. It was just there's one called Mount 72, and it's a wooden post in the ground, but it's built like Stonehenge.
Oh, wow.
So it also aligns with the stages of the moon and the sun, the equinox, the solstice, the sunrise, the sunset. And there's a couple mounds where they think there were like human sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like the Mayans and Aztecs did.
Now, let's see. Do you know do you know these areas called Giant City? Let's see.
Yeah.
Is it-
Yeah, I
Okay.
haven't been there. That's around there too, Giant City.
Okay.
Yeah. This is Cahokia is by Collinsville. I forgot where Giant City is. I think it's a little farther north.
And there's a couple other spots. I don't. A lady that Zillion and I know, I mean Brandy, was just down there recently, and I don't have the list right here, but the Devil's Stand Table was another place. Giant City. Anyway, she went. The Stone Fort is another one. Anyway, she went there with her L rods, and she found that she would get to a certain spot, and they sometimes would point directly at each other, and other times they would point exactly opposite from each other. And then when she walked back the same path, they would repeat in exactly the same way. Uh, did you tell me, Cheryl, that one of your friends had some experiences with dowsing rods out there, or am I imagining
Yeah,
that?
one of my friends did go to the top because I had my dowsing rods in the truck and I didn't even think of bringing them out. But that's where he told me there was a vortex up there because his dowsing rods were going crazy in a certain spot up there. Actually, when you're standing on the top, you can see the St. Louis Arch over in Missouri. That's how high we were.
Wow.
That's neat.
You look down at the cars; they look like little ants on the ground. We were really up there.
I wonder. You wonder what the actual makeup of some of these areas are. We've talked before about Ivan Sanderson and how he in what was it, Invisible Residents or Uninvited Visitors, Zelia?
I believe Invisible Residence was the first mention. Yeah.
Where he talks about vile vortices, and he devoted a chapter, I remember, to the Bermuda Triangle, which was a big deal back then. They were making all kinds of cheesy documentaries on them. A really horrific one narrated by Vincent Price that I actually paid money to go see, but called The Devil's Triangle. It was awful. Anyway, he found that when you plotted the actual disappearances, that they formed kind of an ellipse tilted up, I think, like if you're looking at it on a map, the one end was kind of up on your left side and then down, and it was about 40 miles by 30 miles roughly. And then he found you had mentioned that the what we would call the triangle, the Alaska Triangle, its tip goes over
Mhm.
toward Japan, and that's
Yeah,
the in the double C, the Devil's Triangle
right,
or whatever,
right.
it has other names. It followed the same thing. He found a few
Mhm.
areas like that. Now he hypothesized that there were 12, equidistant throughout the world. They would line up, but of course some of them were purely hypothetical because there's not enough traffic of any kind, planes, ships, or whatever, to go through there. But that's interesting. You wonder, these areas you're mentioning in your book. There's all kinds of strange stuff that goes on there, and like Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the Skinwalker Ranch,
Yeah.
and millions of them. But there's quite a few. We're going to get back to some of your areas in your book in just a moment, but I need to remind everyone that you are listening to the High Strangeness Factor, copyrighted by the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I am Steve Ward. My guest co-host is Zillia Edgar, and we are speaking with Cheryl Lynn Carter. And I want to do a little segue, Cheryl. I want to talk briefly about some of the other books you've written. Tell us about your
Mhm.
works of fiction before we go back to the other stuff.
My Darkness trilogy are it's each book has 10 little short stories in it for people that tell me they don't like to read long books. I made little short stories, read them as you go, and they're like Stephen King, Alfred Hitchcock, those kind of stories. They don't have happy endings.
You're not supposed to. You're not supposed to tell people that.
I tell them if they don't have happy end, they don't know what's going to happen because a lot of people tell me, I thought the story was going this way and then you turn that way. I say, yep.
So are they? Are all three of these anthologies?
Yes.
And you have a standalone book too, don't you? That's don't recall the name of it, but don't you have another
Whispers
book?
Beyond the Grave.
Yes.
Whispers Beyond the Grave. That was my first book, and that's where I talked about. I guess it was kind of an autobiography. I talked about when I was 4 years old and started talking to spirits, and then in high school, and then I got a lot of my investigations that I've done in the book there.
So if people read that book, it's partially fiction, but they can kind of get a look into your life and what it was like growing up.
Well, I mean, Whispers Beyond the Grave. That's totally true. That book's totally true.
Oh, okay. So that's okay.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah,
is an autobiography.
I did investigations that I also have in the book. It's everything in there is true.
Oh.
Okay. Um, Now, you know what? Before we go back to the book, you were telling me about, uh, I guess you would call it a Bigfoot experience you had. You didn't actually see it, but there were all
Yeah.
kinds of other strange things going on. Tell us that story.
2 years ago, I was out at Bachelor's Grove because Chris Halton came over from the UK and he wanted to do a documentary for his channel about Bachelor's Grove, and he knows I go there all the time, so I could know it by the back of my hand. So we're actually filming there, and as we were filming, some guy came along, like people just walk down the trail sometimes. He says, "Hey, did you ever go down this path before?" And I said, "Well, no, I usually come up here by myself, and I'm sure not walking down some path in the forest preserve by myself, no." So we start walking down the path, and all of a sudden I'm hearing tree knocking. And we stopped, and Chris didn't know what it was. He goes, "It sounds like somebody's chopping a tree." And I said, "No, we're in a forest preserve. Nobody's chopping a tree." And I know what an axe sounds like. This was actually somebody knocking on the tree. And I wish he would have done his voiceovers when he went home, but he's going, "Ladies and gentlemen, there's tree knocking." But you could still hear it in the YouTube video. You could still hear it. And so we waited and stopped, waited again. And I got my camera out. I'm going to get a picture, but it was really dense, and I couldn't get in there and see anything, even though I'm snapping pictures. And then it stopped, and we said, all right. We continued to walk down to the trail till we got to the end, and there were two of those lean-tos where the trees are all stacked up real pretty.
The weird
And I
formations that
go,
you find. Yeah.
and I go, yes. Wonder who made those. And so I got some great photos of those. Oh, those are great. He goes, "Oh, is that kids playing?" I said, "I don't think it was kids playing, no." So, and because it was right around by the creek, but the creek was really dry that summer, and that's where they usually build those lean-tos, is by just points out where the water is supposedly. So we turn around, come back down the trail, got to the same spot, and we hear the tree knocking again. And I said, what the heck? Still can't get any pictures. And all of a sudden, something walked between us. We couldn't see it. Walked between us. It smelled so bad, and it walked through the riverbed. And that's what I think Bigfoot is interdimensional. It was there, but we couldn't see him.
Now, you smelled the odor. Did you see any
couldn't see a thing.
Footprints or
no.
Foliage moving or anything like that?
Well, we were on a dirt path, so there was nothing.
Okay.
But I couldn't see him come out of I couldn't see him come out of the trees or anything. No. But he had to be interdimensional. It was there, but I couldn't see a darn thing.
And it was as if it walked between you guys.
Something walked between us.
Okay.
You could kind of feel the draft of something walking between us.
So your sense is, from your experience, that it can't simply be a flesh and blood unknown creature. That there's something. And what were you sensing anything? Were you picking up any vibration or anything like that besides the odor and?
I just felt like something big was walking between us.
Okay.
I mean, it could be a solid creature, but it goes into another dimension. It's why it's here, it's there. And we're not saying it's not solid. It could be.
That's a good point because a lot of people will. I'm glad you defined it, because a lot of people will throw out the word interdimensional, and they don't really say what they mean. It could be a flesh and blood creature that can somehow move elsewhere. But it's interesting that Ron Moorhead, the guy that captured the Sierra Sounds out in the Sierra Nevadas back in the early 70s, his most recent book is called Quantum Bigfoot, and he literally says Bigfoot can materialize and dematerialize. And here's a guy that was, looked at it as a completely solid physical creature, as just an unknown, but he'd seen strange lights and strange orbs, light phenomena out at the camp that they used to go to. So it's interesting that you think it's in some way or another it's interdimensional.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do, because how can something be in front of people's eyes and then all of a sudden, it's just gone? It didn't run that fast. It had to go, and I think as a paranormal investigator, I think that sometimes when we're talking to spirits, you can hardly hear their voice, and sometimes it's loud and clear. And people have said, well, that's because one spirit's stronger than the other. Well, I don't believe that. I think that they're in different dimensions, and that one that we can hardly hear is in a dimension farther away. That's my theory about that. Can't prove that either, but.
Well, but we have to go by the experiences people have. There are those that will ridicule people like you that have had this experience and will say, well, no, Bigfoot is a flesh and blood. It's an unknown that we just haven't discovered yet. But sometimes and I'm just saying, just some of those people will treat people that believe Bigfoot is interdimensional, or people that have had those experiences, in the same way they are treated by the establishment. The establishment will say, there are no Bigfoots. Where's the dead bodies? Where's the roadkill,
right,
and so forth.
Right.
So yeah, it's very interesting. And of course, John Keel came to that conclusion too, that there was something very, very strange afoot. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah, both you ladies have had experiences, and I've had one experience that I won't bore you with, but I did have one thing that was kind of weird. So, but seeing UFOs, and a good friend of mine, Brian Seach, he's an investigator from Pennsylvania. He went out in an area that's known for Bigfoot sightings and hearing that Bigfoot calls and so forth, wood knocks. They went out and they saw a strange light in the sky, maneuvering in impossible maneuvers. Then it disappeared, then it reappeared, and so. But that wasn't a bad trade-off. Go look for a Bigfoot and see a UFO. I don't even get that kind of a trade-off.
Yeah.
Plain.
I did not expect to see it. To hear this Bigfoot knocking. I've been up the cemetery so many times, but I just never went down that trail. And I go, wow. And I'm telling somebody about it when I came home, and they said, yeah, that's a hot spot for Bigfoot. And I go, I didn't know that.
And
Wow.
Julia, isn't that interesting that I know John Keel says that a lot of paranormal events happen at cemeteries and garbage dumps?
Yep.
Do you remember that? I
Yeah,
mean,
the garbage dump thing. Yeah. Cemeteries, garbage dumps, and gravel pits. I know I'm
yes.
always like, I should spend my Wednesday nights at any of those locations.
Well, the
I'm
gravel pit
always
part
at a
is
cemetery. I'm always at a cemetery somewhere. Even when I'm traveling, I check out the cemeteries around where I am. Got to be in a cemetery.
if we if we forego the garbage pits, it won't smell so bad.
No, I don't go to the garbage pits. No, I'll skip those.
Uh, let's talk. Your book is interesting because you mentioned some areas that well, one area I do know about, but you called it, is it Coudersport in Pennsylvania? The Coudersport Triangle? Did I say that
Hmm.
right? Yes. And now you say it's the northern part of Pennsylvania. Is that where the Black Forest is?
Let me see. Yeah, it
I'm
is.
not.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes,
I know that
yeah.
I've got a couple of books that were written way back when about the weird things going on in the Black Forest, and but what are some of the things that occur there?
Well, the natives called the Black Forest the Forbidden Land, so they kind of stayed away from it, and they used it as their burial ground because they thought that that was a gateway to another dimension for their spirits to go after they died. They also have lots of thunderbirds there, the black headless dogs.
Oh,
There's
wait a minute.
ghost
Uh,
ships.
a black
Yeah.
headless dog?
Uh-huh.
Sort
Uh-huh.
of like the black shuck with no head, huh?
Uh-huh.
Um,
And there'll be green balls of light that flash 3 times and they disappear.
um, and that's also an area of a lot of disappearances, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
I think that's one of, if I remember correctly, one of David Paulides' top areas of disappearances over the years of people that vanished without a trace. Also, but of course, other parts of Pennsylvania are a little strange too. I know in the southwest corridor. I don't know maybe it's Greene County. I'm not sure. That's where Stan Gordon chronicled all those bizarre, uh, really odd Bigfoots, ones that would, if you shot them point blank, they would disappear in a hail of sparks,
Wow.
in
Whoa.
conjunction with strange lights in the sky. Yeah, he chronicles all that in Silent Invasion. It was, I remember reading about it years ago back in some of the old UFO magazines, 73, 74. So it seems like all of Pennsylvania is a hot spot. What about Ossipee? That's New Hampshire.
Hmm.
And I know that that's the same area as Betty and Barney Hill, I think.
Yes,
Uh,
it is. That's the
ah,
Betty and Barney Hill place. Yeah.
and of course the classic abduction uh, experience. And what else? What else goes on there?
There's also a place. It's called Mystery Hill, and it's a 400-year-old megalithic complex, and it's also lines up to the moon and the sun, different kinds of the phases of them. They have an underground chambers, and this also has a sacrificial altar. So many sacrificial things. I don't know. They're not quite sure who built this place.
That's a place we'll have to send Chad Lewis to the
Yeah.
sacrificial
I'd
chamber.
like to see this. I'd like to see this. This sounds really interesting.
Sounds very sacrificial, actually, but
Oh boy.
But there's also lots of missing people around this area. A lot of native burial mounds.
it's a beautiful area. I was just a couple months ago. I was there with the for the Exeter UFO Festival, and so on my way home, I took the Route 3 road trip, where Betty and Barney Hill were supposed to have been abducted. And of course, if you go up the road
Mhm.
far enough, you'll see what the sign is where they commemorate the abduction experience. And
Oh
they
well.
also, I was there years and years ago, but now recently they've got a little tourist trap. They've got a little convenience store with a cheesy looking alien painted on the side, and
Oh,
Oh
you,
no.
you can expend exorbitant amount of monies on some pretty cool mugs and with the cheesy alien on it, and T-shirts and so forth. So some entrepreneur really capitalized on that area, and it's there's not much up there. There are some resorts and everything, but it is kind of interesting when you're driving up Route 3, especially at night, to imagine what they went through. Now, there's another one you mentioned that I didn't really know anything about, and that's in Vermont. I forget the name of it, but of the area. But is it Burlington?
Bennington?
Burlington? Bennington. Okay, there you
Bennington?
go. Yes.
Bennington.
And yeah, just what
Okay.
anything is it the kind of the same kind of thing? Disappearances, UFOs, and so forth.
It's got a really weird place. It's got a place called the Long Trail. It's the longest hiking trail in the U.S. It's 272 miles long,
wow.
and for about 5 years there was an incident where people would just be hiking on this trail and would just disappear. Like there could be people seeing someone up in front of them, and when they come around the bend, the person had just disappeared.
Wow.
I'm going to have to dig out my David Paulides books. I'm sure a lot of his stuff must parallel.
And this has got to be one of his parts. And one of the strangest things was there was actually a soldier that he had come back from the war, and he was heading back to St. Albans on the bus, and people are watching him. You know, he's sitting on the bus with them, and then all of a sudden they looked over and he was gone, and the bus didn't stop. You know, he didn't get off. He just disappeared. But he was right there. He was right there. You know, they're close by that trail. It's just very strange. Another college girl one night, she said she wanted to go for a little hike there, and asked one of her friends if she wanted to come along, and she says, no, I really don't want to. So she walked out there by herself, and people remember seeing her going down the trail, and she's walking along the trail like she always does. She knew her way, so it wasn't like she was getting lost. And two people remembered seeing her right up ahead of them, and when they went around the bend, she was gone, never to be found again.
That
It was all along this long trail.
classic David Paulides. Have either one of you read
Yeah.
any of the Missing 411 books?
They're
Yeah.
on my list.
Yeah, okay. Cheryl, have you read any of David Paulides' stuff?
Yeah, I got to talk to him up in Chicago one year. Yeah,
I know
very
you got to,
interesting.
but I've read maybe three of his books completely, and then read other parts, and they're they're hard to get through. I mean,
Yeah.
but you know, Cheryl, one of the most interesting things to me is there are people that vanish, there are people that disappear, and they find their body much later under strange circumstances. But occasionally somebody comes back, and they're befuddled. They can't explain what happened to them. And that to me is the most fascinating. Sometimes they're young children that are too young to describe what happened, but sometimes they're adults that don't seem to be able to express what they experienced. So
Yeah,
it's
because it's still. Do you walk into another dimension and you finally pop back out? That would be. What do you even see when you're over there? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Remember that episode of The Twilight Zone, Little Girl Lost, where
Oh,
yes, I just watched it again recently. It's where it was classic, written by oh, come on, the great writer for The Twilight Zone. It'll come to me.
Rod
But
Sterling. Rod
no,
Sterling.
no,
No,
he wrote a lot of them. But this was
not
Richard
that one. Huh?
Matheson. Richard Matheson,
okay.
who
Oh yes.
great
Yes.
writer.
Yes.
And do you
Yeah.
remember that one, Cheryl, where they hear the little girl, they can't find her, and he calls over a friend who's a physicist, and they find out that there's been an opening, a portal right in the bedroom. The dog runs in after the girl and disappears as well, and they can hear her calling. Anyway, it's every parent's nightmare that
Yeah.
they can't find their child. And I guess Richard Anderson said that the thing that inspired the story was they couldn't find their little girl one time, and they were started to panic, and then he just looked, and she was just hidden in a fold of the blanket, so she
Oh,
was there all the
God.
time. But that is one of
Uh,
the creepiest episodes, and
uh,
I have to tell you that I when I started reading those books, I was very lackadaisical about the areas I was going into, and I even spent an overnight in a watershed area in upstate New York near some of the old stone chambers. And it was a couple months later I started finding out about David Paulides, and I thought, okay, we're not doing that alone anymore, if we're doing it at all.
Yeah.
And and
I
one thing I
know.
want
I do
to,
lots of things alone. I shouldn't do that, but I do.
well, you always think that you're not going to be the one that's going to end up in the next book.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I mean, you go somewhere, you don't think anybody's going to do anything to you. Or like, I go to Bachelor's Grill by myself all the time. People, you have to by yourself. Yeah. I don't feel afraid when I'm in the cemetery. It's like the spirits are protecting me. It sounds weird.
They don't talk to me at all. I guess I must not be a brilliant conversationalist when it comes to the spirits,
Oh,
but
I love that place. It's just amazing. The first time I went there, I didn't know any of the stories about it. I just went up with my sister. I go, it's supposed to be a cool place. Let's go. We go up there, and it's been totally vandalized. It's just a little cemetery. So we're going around trying to look at the different stones, see if we could see any names. And there was one over by the fence, and we're looking. It was just so old we couldn't figure it out. I said, well, let's go over and look at some over on this side. And we heard a man's voice, distinct voice. Hey, come back here. And we thought we were going to see a guy standing on the other side of the fence. And I looked, and I didn't see anybody. And I'm looking and looking through the trees, and I saw like a lantern. So I snapped a picture of it. Okay, I didn't know there was the famous lantern in the woods. I got a picture of it.
wow.
So I said, well, I'm going to go see where that guy went. So I went, here's me. I'm going to see where the guy went. So I walked out of the cemetery. I started going down the path to go see where he was. Yeah, by myself. So I'm walking past there, and I don't know where the path is going. And as I'm going down the path, on the left side, I see a white farmhouse with a porch and a rocking chair. And there's a light on in the window, and I'm going, what's all the lights on in the middle of the afternoon? And I'm thinking, and why is there a house? Because there's no houses around there anymore. It's a forest preserve. And so I turned around to my sister. I said, Kathy, look at this. And she goes, what? And I looked, and I go, never mind, it was gone. Now, I didn't know there was an disappearing farmhouse. And I didn't have a camera with me at that time to take a picture. I mean, was it there? Was I just seeing it in my head? I don't know. But then as we went down where the path was, there's actually a creek there, and there's no way there could be a house sitting on the creek. Yes, I mean, it's a strange place. And you'll always get voices talking to you. They're still there.
Wow. Okay, and that's something I've never experienced. Very quickly, I wanted to mention to Zelia and everybody that if you pursue David Paulides' books, go to his website, which I think is Can-Am Missing 411. If you find them on Amazon, they're all third-party sellers, and people will jack the prices way up. So you definitely want to go to the source. All that money goes back into his research and everything. But Cheryl, I wanted to ask you about. You and I visited the Brighton, Michigan CE5 group, which
Mm-hmm.
follows I guess, the procedures that Stephen Greer has laid out about contact. And you've had some experiences there. The night I was there with you, we were assaulted by mosquitoes, and I think it was still
Always, always,
close
always.
to it was still close to the July 4th, and they were shooting fireworks at a distant lake, which was making all kinds of noise. But it's very interesting. I just want to mention very quickly that there's a lot of controversy about Stephen Greer, and a lot of people think he's a charlatan. But the people that run this particular group have been out there with them, and they have experienced phenomena. Could you talk a little bit about some of the things you've experienced while they go through kind of a positive ritual thing where they're opening up possible contact for alien beings, I guess you could say. But I know that you've seen things and you've had experiences during those events.
I have pictures. I have pictures. Yeah. We actually we do a meditation, and that's why they keep the group very small. I know Dr. Greer has hundreds of people in his group. I don't know how you can control a group that big. I like because people like to talk and everything. So we have a nice quiet group. You do meditation, and then they always have the singing bowls, and I really think that the vibration from the singing bowls helps attract whatever we're attracting. Could just be spirits, who knows? But we are attracting something. And I remember the first time I always sit facing the woods. There's something attracting me to those woods. Now, whether something comes out of the woods, whether something comes down to the woods, I don't know what's out there, but we always bring something out of the woods. And the first time I saw two, all of a sudden in the middle, it was like somebody turned two flashlights on, and there were two balls of light. And they started moving back and forth and back and forth. And then they would change places. And then as the singing bowls were playing, the ones started stretching up and it was swaying, like it was dancing to the music. And I watched them for a half hour. I didn't get them on video, but I got them on my FLIR. And then all of a sudden, it was like somebody just turned the flashlight off and they were gone. And I'm trying to point them out to people, and they're going, yeah. And they kept looking up in the sky. And I said, no, whatever's happening is over there. And then another time I saw another light by the woods. I took a picture, and I didn't realize till I looked at my photo that it looks like some kind of an alien being. It does. It's got light around it. It looks like a childlike creature. I can't say what it is. I showed it to Ricky Butterfast when he was down there with us, and he said it was a child. He says they send the children down to play with you. So I can't be sure what that was, but last time there was actually some kind of lights on the ground in the circle. I took pictures. There were 3 lights in a triangle shape on the ground. There should be no lights in our circle. Don't know what that was.
Yeah. I remember Kim. It was one of the leaders of the group, and they were telling us some really bizarre experiences people have had. So I don't know what's going on there, but there certainly is some reality to it. They talked about one night where they could actually see kind of what looked like a force field. It was really, I guess, kind of fog surrounding them, and one of the ladies there suddenly spontaneously started to channel, which
Wow.
Was very unusual for her.
I wasn't there that night. I missed that one.
I know you weren't there that night. They were just telling some stories.
Yeah.
But didn't you see something like a force field or sense a force field one time when you were out there?
The last time when we were there, it was like a fog, if you want to call it. It wasn't a big fog, because we're down in the soccer field, which is in like a valley, but it was a circle of fog around us. And it was maybe, not too tall above us, but you could see it was like it was building a little Stonehenge around us or something. I wanted to say, it built this circle of fog around us the whole time that we were there. And it was, there was actually moisture because, our feet were wet and everything. It was not raining out there or anything like that. But when this fog came around, it was just totally wet inside our circle. The grass was wet. It was weird. And then it eventually went away all just by itself.
I wonder, I've always kind of thought that I might be one of those people that grounds out the phenomena or whatever. I'm the guy that there's aliens, there's spirits, there's whatever around, but there's something that I take everything to ground and nothing happens. So I think it's one of the few times that nothing happened was the night I was there. So I don't know.
We were getting high EMF readings, remember?
Oh, that's right. That's right. We did have
on the Mel meter.
Weird.
We were getting high readings
that's
that
right.
night. I don't know what it was.
And it's we're at a park which is it's a little bit rural, but not very rural. It's near what Hamburg, Michigan. But we were in kind of an area where we were in kind of a depression where we're kind of away from everything. Kind of a nice area to go.
Right.
And
So we shouldn't be getting any strange readings.
no, there was nothing. No source that I could see where that would happen. But yeah, I think I'm the kind of person that would like to really experience something. But if it ever happens and I start screaming like a little girl, then I'll kind of rethink that. But because I
So
just
like last time, Marcel saw. He says he saw two crafts up in the left-hand side of the sky, and so he got his laser pointer and he flashed 3 times at them, and they flashed back at him. He did that several times. He said there were two crafts up there.
Wow.
I'm not sure what we were looking at, but something was flashing back at us.
wow. Well, I would.
I
I know I've been invited
can't
to
say
go
what
back.
it was. It was interesting. Can't say what it was. It was interesting.
Yeah, I'd love to go back. I know I was invited to go back, but I was had something else going on. So hopefully, when the weather gets a little better. By the way,
Yeah,
how's the weather?
they won't do any. They won't do any till it gets warm.
No,
Too. 'Cause it
it's
gets cold out. It gets cold out there.
it's freezing. And
Yeah.
my buddy Brian Zeller, who did the music for the show, was gloating about how warm it was down in Tennessee. So
Lucky.
yeah, I know. He's like that,
I woke up
Brian.
and saw snow this morning. Go, no,
Yep.
we've got leaves on the trees. No.
Yeah, that's awful when it snows with leaves on the tree. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, this is a really fun book. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but your latest book, Dimensions, Mysterious Triangles of the U.S., and you've got all your other books very easily found on Amazon, right? With
Right.
under Cheryl Lynn Carter. And now, is there anything else you want to promote? Do you have a website or anything like that, or any way that people can contact you?
I have a website, but I kind of need to update that a lot. But I'm also on Instagram. I'm on Twitter.
If they
And if
type
you
your
want an
name,
an autograph book, you can just get me on Facebook. I can autograph one. If you get it on Amazon, it doesn't get autographed.
well, it was nice. It was fun to hear your presentation at Michigan MUFON last Sunday. Bill Konkoleski is a great guy. Runs he's for years now. What's he been doing it for about 10 years, I think. He really runs a great group, and it's always it's unfortunate it's every other month, for part of the year because
Yeah.
it's as you know, as both of you know, Zilly and I were at the Van Meter Visitor Festival. There is nothing better than going to one of these events and just talking to people about this stuff
Exactly.
Yeah.
that don't think you're weird.
Oh yeah.
And Bill wrote the foreword for my book. That was so nice.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was it was very nicely done, by the way. And Zilia, thank you so much for being here as my guest co-host,
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great time.
and I hope you'll come back again sometime. And remind everybody to check the archives to find our interview that we did fairly recently on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Check the Podbean link for the High Strangeness Factor. And again, your website with your great YouTube videos is?
JustAnotherTinfoilHat.com. No spaces.
And a must. You have to check that out. Okay, well, thank you both so much for being here. And like I said earlier in the show, we had some technical difficulties, so I really appreciate you both hanging in there. And I think we have a much better show as a result of and overcame the technical difficulties.
Yeah.
So thanks again. So everybody, sit tight.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to do my stellar closeout here. I also want to thank Irene Allen Block and Mark Johnson. And they, of course, are our fearless leaders here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I also want to thank Andy Mercer, my occasional regular co-host and my full-time producer. He gets the show up on time and makes it sound as good as it possibly can. I also want to thank Brian Zeller, even though he's enjoying better weather than I am. He composed the original music for the show. And I am Steve Ward, your humble host here on the High Strangeness Factor, a displaced Yank here on Paranormal UK Radio. Thank you for listening. I will see you all again in a fortnight. Take care.